Today we're taking a look at Mahiru Shiina from The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten. This is the Mahiru Shiina figure by Banpresto. The Angel Next Door Spoils Me Rotten is a romantic drama series centered on the growing relationship between two students who live next door to each other. Within that story, Mahiru is known as the quiet and highly admired girl at school whose gentle care gradually changes the everyday life of the boy living beside her. That calm and gentle presence is a big part of what makes her stand out in the series. Today's highlights for this figure are the softly smiling face looking toward the viewer, the detailed school uniform, especially the folds and the skirt shaping between the legs, and the strong sense of volume despite the low-seated height. The first highlight is the softly smiling face looking toward the viewer. The eyes are directed clearly forward, and the small curved mouth keeps the expression gentle instead of exaggerated. Because the face is brought close to the knees and one hand rests near the top of the leg, the smile feels quiet and personal rather than distant. The second highlight is the detailed school uniform, especially the folds and the skirt shaping between the legs. The shirt gathers in small folds across the front as the torso leans forward, while the skirt changes shape around the waist, the seated area, and the deep space between the legs. The plaid pattern also bends with those folds, so the clothing reads as fabric under pressure rather than as a flat printed block. The third highlight is the strong sense of volume despite the low seated height. The pose keeps the figure compact, but the knees project forward, the skirt spreads outward at the bottom, and the long hair flows down and around the back. That combination gives the figure a fuller silhouette than the height alone would suggest. This channel brings you figure reviews and anime merchandise updates straight from Japan. If you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. The head leaves a soft first impression because the face is built from a rounded outline, large eyes, and a very small smiling mouth rather than from any sharp or dramatic feature. The eyes are framed by darker upper lines, and inside the irises, the warm brown tones and bright highlights are layered clearly enough that the gaze reads immediately from the front. Even though the smile is small, the mouth curves upward just enough to make the expression feel calm and friendly, and because the nose stays very restrained, the eyes and mouth become the main center of attention. The face is angled inward toward the knees, which brings the expression closer to the viewer and makes the smile feel more intimate. After that, the hair adds most of the visual information around the head. The bangs are divided into many narrow sections across the forehead, with shorter central strands and slightly longer outer strands, so the front edge does not look like one heavy plate. Around the face, the hair forms a layered frame instead of a single outline, because one set of strands stays closer to the cheeks, while another falls slightly farther out along the side. From the top of the head into the back, the hair spreads into a broad, smooth mass and then drops well past the waist. As it descends, that larger mass separates into many long tapered sections, and the tips do not end at one straight line. Some curve outward, some turn back inward, and some continue down more directly, which keeps the lower edge active from every angle. Seen from behind, the hair covers a wide area and becomes one of the largest shapes in the figure, but from the front it stays controlled enough that the face remains fully readable. The upper body is arranged around a forward-leaning seated pose, and that posture defines the shape of the shirt, the angle of the shoulders, and the placement of both arms. The torso folds inward toward the raised legs, so the shirt does not read as one flat front surface. Instead, it shows a series of small changes across the bust and down into the midsection, with some areas pulled a little tighter and others gathered into shallow folds. Those wrinkles are not limited to a single point. They continue across the front of the body, which helps the shirt feel shaped by the seated posture rather than simply laid over the torso. The short sleeves are kept simple and clean. Rather than ending in a thick turned-up cuff, each sleeve finishes as a plain short sleeve edge before the bare arm extends out underneath it. At the center of the collar area, a dark red tie adds an important point of contrast against the broad white shirt surface. Because the face, collar, and upper chest are all close together in this pose, that tie works as a compact visual accent between the head and body, and it also helps define the uniform more clearly. The arm placement gives the upper half much of its character. One hand rests lightly on top of the knee, and the fingers curve only slightly, so it looks placed gently rather than gripping. The other arm runs down along the outer line of the leg and reaches toward the sock area, but it does not cut deeply across the front of the shin. That keeps the arm and leg silhouettes readable as separate forms even though they are close together. The long hair also passes beside and behind the upper body, creating a layered side view where hair, sleeve, arm, shirt, and skirt appear in sequence rather than collapsing into one shape. The lower body is built around a compact seated pose with both knees drawn upward, and that gives the figure its strongest mass right at the front. The thighs rise forward in broad, smooth surfaces, the knees form rounded high points near the center, and then the lower legs narrow down toward the ankles, so the silhouette moves from fullness into a tighter finish rather than staying evenly thick all the way through. Because the face and one hand are brought close to the knees, the legs are not just part of the pose. They become one of the main visual blocks of the whole figure. The skirt adds much of the complexity here. Around the waist, it stays closer to the body, but farther down it opens and drops into a looser shape where the fabric spreads at the seated base. That change becomes especially important in the space between the legs, where the cloth is drawn inward and downward to form a deep central fold. The plaid lines follow that shaping instead of ignoring it. They bend around the hips, shift through the folds, and change direction slightly where the fabric is compressed, so the pattern helps show the form of the skirt instead of flattening it. Along the lower edge, the hem does not stay rigid. It bends, opens, and settles differently around the base, which gives the seated cloth a stronger sense of shape. Below that, the socks create a very clean visual break. The skin tone of the legs switches sharply into a deep blue at the upper sock line, and from there the lower legs run down into simple dark shoes. Those shoes use rounded toes, a single strap across the top, square buckles, and low heels, so the design stays neat and compact. Even though the pose keeps the figure low in height, the forward knees, the widening skirt at the bottom, and the long hair wrapping around the back all add volume in different directions, which is why the figure still feels full and substantial. This figure is approximately 12 centimeters tall. That's about 4.7 inches. For size comparison, here's a 350 milliliter can. That's about 12 ounces in the US. Overall, Mahiru Shiina by Banpresto stands out because this figure combines a gentle, smiling expression, a carefully shaped school uniform, and a seated pose that creates more volume than the height first suggests. The face makes a very clear first impression. The eyes are large and bright, with layered brown tones and clean highlights that make the gaze easy to read from the front, while the small curved mouth keeps the expression soft and calm. Because the head is angled in toward the knees, that expression feels close and personal rather than distant. The bangs are broken into many fine sections, and the longer side strands frame the cheeks without hiding the eyes, so the face stays open and readable. Behind that, the very long hair becomes one of the biggest shapes in the figure. It falls far down the back, separates into multiple tapered sections, and gives the silhouette extra width and length from the rear and side views. The upper body works well because the posture, the shirt, and the arms all support the same inward moving pose. The torso leans into the raised legs, and the shirt responds with small folds and surface changes across the front instead of staying smooth and flat. The short sleeves are kept plain, which helps the upper arms read cleanly without adding extra thickness at the edges. At the collar, the dark red tie gives the white shirt a stronger focal point and makes the uniform identity clearer in the center of the upper body. One hand rests lightly on the knee while the other follows the outer line of the leg, and that difference in arm placement helps the pose feel natural without becoming visually crowded. The side view is also strong because the hair, sleeve, arm, shirt, and skirt overlap in layers rather than collapsing into one block. The lower body carries much of the figure's physical presence. The knees come forward as the main mass, the lower legs narrow cleanly toward the ankles, and the shoes keep the end of the silhouette compact and neat. The skirt is especially effective because it changes character from top to bottom. Near the waist, it stays closer to the body, but lower down it opens and spreads, and between the legs it forms a deep inward fold that gives the front view much more depth. The plaid lines move with those folds, which helps the skirt feel shaped by the pose instead of simply decorated with a pattern. The socks and shoes keep the lower half visually organized with a strong color break and simple forms. What makes the whole figure work especially well is the way the pose guides the eye. The view starts at the face, moves down through the hand and knees, then continues into the skirt, socks, and shoes, while the long hair wraps around the outer edge and adds volume from behind. Even though the figure is only about 12 centimeters tall, it does not feel small or thin. The forward knees, the spread of the skirt, and the long descending hair give it a fuller presence from multiple angles. Because of that, fans of The Angel Next Door, Spoils Me Rotten, or Mahiru Shiina will definitely enjoy this piece. Collectors who like soft smiling expressions, detailed school uniform shaping, and compact seated poses with strong volume should find it a very satisfying addition. That's it for this video. If there's any part of the figure you liked, feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.